A very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. Sani Bonani Nonke. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2021 National Presidential Address of the South African Institution of Civil Engineering. I'm Jessica Ramchand, a fellow civil engineer and member of the SAIC Seed Committee and your Master of Ceremonies this afternoon. The events of the last 11 months have left no individual, family, or business untouched. We remember those dear ones whom we have lost to the pandemic, the soaring unemployment and retrenchment numbers, business closures, and workload and order book uncertainties for those entities that look hopefully for a better next quarter. Closer to home, our homes have become our offices, and we are now our children's teachers. And we're taking Zoom meetings and Teams calls in our pajamas, whilst the lines between work and home have been blurred. Resilience is the word that comes to mind when we reflect on where we are and how far we have come and where we want to go to. SAIC, with its mission to advance professional knowledge and to improve the practice of civil engineering in South Africa, embodies this resilience. Tonight's lineup promises to be engaging, thought-provoking, and action-orientated. All the things that we need in this critically important profession to deliver value to our members, our communities, and our country. This evening, we talk with SAIC CEO Vishal Lakshman, a word from our sponsors, Macquarie South Africa, a take on the views of graduate civil engineer Nalutando Zita, and onto the highlights of this evening's event, the national address by SAIC President Vishal Krishnadath. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your opportunity to engage with us. I encourage you to use the chat function. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you're joining us from. You can also tell us if you're in your pajamas. And post your questions in the Q&A box. Engage with us on social media using the hashtag SAIC2021NPA on all our social media platforms. So on to this evening's proceedings. Vishal Lakshman is a professional engineer with an MBA through the University of KwaZulu-Natal and has obtained his master's in philosophy leadership from the University of Johannesburg. Vishal has served in several key roles for private and public sector entities since 1998, including capital projects at Transnet National Ports Authority and Royal Haskoning DHB. His extensive experience encompasses various critical areas such as feasibility development, management, strategy development, capacity planning, governance, and risk management. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Vishal Lakshman, CEO of SAIC, to the platform.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. It was an interesting start. I see you painted a bit of a bleak picture to start this evening off, but I think it will change as we go through the proceedings. So if I may, please proceed to the next slide. Now, the purpose of this conversation, it was a difficult one for me to think about on what to say to our members. So I could come up with the objective in this case is to inspire and promote the concept of nation building. And I'm speaking about nation building because we've been broken in so many places that it almost seems insurmountable for us to think about where to start to fix so many things. So rather than pick on the symptoms and the issues that we find in our daily lives, I was thinking about proposing a new way of thinking, and hence the comment on insights and perspectives for reflection. So the concept of nation building by civil engineers in contributing to South Africa's infrastructure development, and the key words is in a socially just, environmentally sensitive, and economically robust manner as we grow forward together. So the discussion points relate to the concept of how do we go about, or what should we think about when we start to think of how do we build our nation? Some of us may not even want to, but I really urge us to think about it in a positive light. There's perspectives that come from those that work in the public sector, and there's a few initiatives on the go currently to enhance that. And obviously, there's a private perspective. There's a private sector perspective on how do we respond and make this work. And the public-private combination, as it applies to social compacts and the concept of a developmental state, are key to get this economy going. Then there's a SICE perspective. In other words, what are we contributing to the discussion of social compacting or a developmental state? And then there's the social perspective. In other words, the hat that we all wear. We all are part of society in some form or the other, and we wear a few hats in the other green blocks as well. So let's talk about how do we fit in and construct this nation of ours to make it successful as we'd like it to be. So when it comes to successful nations, just to start off, we need to just perhaps think about what makes a nation successful, and sometimes we might forget. So I put two bullet points. The nations that are successful invest in institutions, both public and private sector, and they invest a lot in human capacity. Now, if you just pick up on these two bullet points, you may realize that we have probably done badly in both, and specifically probably in the last decade. So on the back of rampant corruption, institutions have become unsustainable, both public and private sector. If you look at how many businesses have closed as a result of perhaps corruption or the economic impacts. And it has been exacerbated by high levels of political influence that affect appointments and contracts awarded. So we understand this, it's become common knowledge now. There's a systemic decline in the quality of education at primary and secondary level, which will continue to negatively influence human capacity in the short term and the medium and long term as well. So I think a lot of focus needs to go into the education department, and I think there were many critics that didn't see the value of cutting budgets in the education sector, for example. There's a lack of strategic focus broadly in human capacity in the public sector. Over an extended period of time, there's reduced training and development, which has negatively impacted our very necessary investment in human capacity in both the public and private sector. So we are losing generally on both fronts, and hence we find ourselves in this frustrating situation that we are in, with possibly no way out or easy way out. Leadership in the broad sense, and this is a very broad general statement, so forgive me for that, can be described to date largely as being selfish, where leaders look after themselves, with no real care for people. Personal gains are at the expense of societal losses. So from a public perspective, working in the public sector means that we are serving our communities. It has to be done with purpose, intended to improve the lives of society. A public servant has nobility, and I think that's the key, that's the word I could find. It's a noble job to have in your role, and it was never intended to make one extremely wealthy for a public servant. It's predominantly in the private sector that business people generate huge value in terms of wealth. Corruption is almost privatized the public sector to some extent, and that's a comment that I could make, where being in government seems to be the job one wants to have to become an elite. So it's a result of systemic elitism that drives that kind of behavior. So how do we think about it in that case? Initiatives to professionalize the public sector. We should have heard a lot about that. The president actually announced from his desk this morning even around what the intentions from government is to enhance the public sector, further capacitate it, school of government, etc., are all initiatives that have been acknowledged by government to work on in the public sector. There are initiatives to bring about structural reforms in the economy, allowing for a new approach to economic growth. ESCOM, Transit, and the other are projects being worked on by various parts of government to try and bring about a developmental state and unlocking monopolies, etc. We need to get out of planning paralysis. Many departments are doing planning to the end of the earth, to be honest with you, and we seem to focus on planning because planning seems easy. However, we often get it wrong. The country's quality of debt has to be improved. It cannot be only consumption orientated. In other words, we raise debt to consume, and that is not going to support a developmental state or thinking around how we're going to unlock the economy. Planning, as I spoke about earlier, is not integrated in many cases. So they don't talk to each other, especially between the three spheres of government, which lack integration. Planning for communities should not be for political point scoring. Focusing on the development of a capable state is something that has many facets to it. And I think from a public sector perspective, there's a lot of work to be done. And I think that's where the institution and our members can play a good role in making the state capable. But I'll get to the other blocks just now. Through planning, we can create a meaningful link between infrastructure, poverty, growth, and unemployment, including the SDGs. And these should no longer be a talking point. Connecting these four concepts is what has caused social injustice at this point in time. Societal demands are an expectation of government and are rising rapidly with regard to implementation and needs to be managed. The expectations of society can no longer be denied. So from the private perspective, how do we change our view and how do we look at this game differently? There appears to be an ongoing misunderstanding of the role of the private sector. Private business is geared towards financial sustainability and growth. Shareholder value is prioritized over social value. For all of us that are in business, you know what I'm talking about. However, in this case, at this time, more has to be done, unfortunately. Corruption is the other hand in the private sector. Initiatives to repair the situation are, again, stop participating in corruption proactively. In other words, from a private sector perspective, we need to really walk away from this. There are many reasons why I say that. It's because the corruption factor is a virus that kills just about everything. It's not about one benefiting. These are short-lived benefits, long-term losses. The current economic situation also compromises private sector sustainability, as we have seen how many companies are going out of business on a daily basis. Seek to support rather than exploit. And the exploiting nature of the private sector really is something that should be sitting within the excos of various businesses, looking at how can we give a little bit more without exploiting. Encourage connectivity with the public sector, such as skills transfer, by honoring the intent of supplier development. And I've been witness to cases where this has not been honored. It becoming a tick box exercise helps nobody. And it should be done without commercial fronting. Development of skills through investing in people and institutions leaves much room for improvement. And this is across the board as well. Clarifying the roles of the public and private sector is important for us to get right, because that is the fundamental understanding of, or the fundamental to ensure that the development state concept can actually work. I'll speak a little bit more perhaps in the Q&A session of what we talk about when we mean developmental state. Okay, it's got a very discrete meaning and it has good intentions. It's neither capitalist or socialist, but we can talk about it later on. The private sector has to self-manage corrupt behaviors in the fraternity of civil engineering. So basically, I'm talking about our own members in the public sector and the private sector really have to start consciously making personal decisions to walk away from these things. We need to make a culture of ethical behavior endemic to business growth strategies, and it has to become part of everyone's businesses. We have to build trust, and trust is a diminishing commodity, as you may or may not agree, but in my perspective, trust is broken with clients and employees. And all we have to go by is the procurement process, which looks to manage that relationship between suppliers and clients. We have to build more meaningful relationships with academia and the scientists that are available, that are pushing boundaries of knowledge. As you have seen with the way COVID was, the way we are attending to COVID, our scientists are in fact world-class, and they are able to contribute meaningfully globally to the solutions around vaccines. And the same applies to the engineers. Unpack the private sector's role in the developmental state has not been done because many of the reforms have not been happening to date. So from a SAICI perspective, how do we support? The institution stands next to government, irrespective of whether we like or don't like what is happening. We respect the institutions of what government stands for. Okay, so the initiatives that I'm going to talk about are not exhaustive, But we have to, as an institution and our members and our divisions and branches, we have to support by championing the cause of civil engineers. We have to champion science, technology, all for the good of civil society. Economic decline, and the lack of regard for science and technology has led to despondency in our fraternity. Initiatives to repair the situation are, for example, as it applies to our members, we have to remember and realize the role of the designer, the scientist, the academic, the advisor, the planner, and the constructor. We have to redefine our purpose linked to the extreme and desperate need for engineering skills in our country, although it may not feel like those skills are hugely demanded right now. The institution has the highest regard for the mandate of the institutions in both public and private, and has commenced with active engagements at national office and encouraging that branches and divisions do the same. We've had some small wins this year already. We are in the process of redefining the manner in which we look at providing capacity building in our economy, working smarter and working harder, whilst remembering that your client is often the intermediary. And I think I'd like to make that point a little bit more clear. Society is the ultimate user and beneficiary of many of the assets that we create. So as much as a department might be paying the fees of a designer, for example, remember the beneficiary of the asset. It's not the actual government department. It's the people that inherit these assets on behalf of the agencies that are working for society. And I think that's who we need to respect the most whilst we go about our daily jobs. We need to gain the appreciation for the negative effects of transactional and the opportunity for a transformative approach in life overall. It can bring much meaning to how we do what we do. From a society perspective, this cap is probably one that we all wear. So civil society, that means you and I, have felt the impact of economic decline. Frustrations and a sense of hopelessness appears to be the order of the day. COVID has further made societal circumstances untenable. We're sitting with the highest unemployment rate of 32.5%, which means 7.2 million people, and partly our colleagues as well, are not meaningfully employed at this time. How do we think about it from a societal perspective? In other words, when we are engaging socially, just you and I, have a regard for the infrastructure that's in place. We cannot afford the loss of further infrastructure by us destroying what we have. There has to be a focus, holding leaders accountable. I see an upsurge in entities trying to do that through NGOs and NPOs as well. Forces are working to divide us as communities, as society overall. Let us realize that we are in this together, irrespective of whether we find ourselves divided or not, because the economic situation affects us all irrespective. Participate actively when allowed to do so, such as public participation events, planning inputs, comments on proposed legislation. We need to become a lot more active and take this game a lot more seriously. Despondency has to be translated into active citizenship. Respect the earth we live on, protect it so that it can give us life ongoing. Educate oneself every chance we have. Read, debate, think critically, and educate another. Stop the negative dialogue in the office, the home, community sessions, and I'm sure we are all guilty of that, even myself as well sometimes. And we need to stop that. Assist another in this time of need, as there are many of us in society in need of help. Social justice affects us all. Let us strive for such as a collective. So in doing this, and how do we go about it? Values of leadership. Lead by setting an example. Seek out change, but not for fame. Focus on the essence of what it means to be a leader. There is a lot of content available currently, and we might have, by default, worked out what a good leader is just by witnessing the events of the day. Place values at the heart of every action. Harness ambiguity and uncertainty. Cultivate diversity and collaboration. And I still remain of the firm belief that South Africa is best able to cultivate diversity and leverage it meaningfully. Focus on harnessing technology through learning, experimenting, and study. Embrace vulnerability and adversity, because that's what we are facing right now. And we are able to do it for reasons unknown. Our capacity to embrace adversity is enormous based on what we have gone through in our new democracy. Be willing to always develop yourself and develop those around you. Again, using very positive type of engagement. Nurture the next generation of leaders because we are generally accountable to them. I'd like to just end my presentation for today by leaving us with these 4 points, which I do on an ongoing basis. We have to live values. We have to learn with understanding and meaning because we need to use it in our daily lives going forward. Whenever we think, we have to think as a collective. The ongoing, you would have seen I mentioned the transactional versus transformative discussion. When we start thinking society, we start to move away from the transactional type of behaviors where we want something from somebody or somebody wants something from us. We need to think society in the way we transform how we are going to do our jobs on a daily basis. Seek to always help and capacitate. And our strength, as I mentioned previously, lies in our diversity. And that being broken is where our weakness will sit. So I think it's important that we work very hard to appreciate the value proposition that we have lying in front of us, which is our diversity, to make the best in this developmental state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vishal. You've aptly painted a picture of the state of the industry at present, and you've also offered some meaningful perspectives on moving forward. So we'll pick up these with you in our Q&As. Let's keep those questions coming in the Q&A box, and we'll take some of those later on. So thanks once again, Vishal. A special thanks to our sponsors for the evening, McAfee South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Kyle Poolman, civil engineer at McAfee South Africa. The floor is yours.
Well, good evening, Jessica, and thank you, Vishal, firstly for your leadership. Thank you to SAICI for the opportunity to be an industry sponsor, firstly. As you said, my name is Kyle, and I'm a civil engineer at McAfee. We're honored to be part of your 2021 SAICI presidential address, and we appreciate this opportunity. McAfee, as an industry partner, is today one of the largest providers of innovative solutions for the civil and mining industry, with one of the most comprehensive product ranges in the market. So we are focused on providing not only products, but rather solutions as well, where we try to collaborate with you and our industry. For example, we use products like double twist steel mesh and geosynthetics to provide all sorts of solutions, such as basal reinforcing, retaining structures, erosion control applications, rockfall barriers, hydraulics, and many more. So I can't really explain our company without touching a bit on its history. McAfee was born in the 1890s in Bologna, Italy, where the Reno River had burst its banks, and they used wrought iron single twist steel mesh like sausages to repair the riverbanks, as seen in a couple of these pictures. The square gabion, as you know it today, was born then in 1910, and is a material that is very well known to most of those in our industry. And this was born out of double twist steel mesh, invented by McAfee. Following this, in the 1950s, a subsidiary of McAfee called Ribbon Sea Gabions was opened here in South Africa to distribute products. And in the late 1980s, African Gabions was born, where the first production facility of DT double twist mesh products opened in Isitebe with one production line. These products are mostly used in hydraulic and mass gravity wall applications, among others. In 1990, the McAfee Group started moving away from only using mass gravity walls but rather also following a newish trend of using soil reinforced structures or mechanically stabilized earth. In chasing this goal, Macaferi developed the TerraMesh and Green TerraMesh facing systems using our double twist steel mesh product or knowledge. Back at home, the factory was then moved to Westmead, and our production here in South Africa was subsequently increased. In the 2000s, the Macaferi Southern Africa, or Macaferi Africa later on, was born as a technical design and supply company, or supply company, whilst various different products were added to our portfolio, including things like MacRes, concrete panel MSC walls, our rockfall barriers, and a whole range of geosynthetics. In 2017, our engineering unit was formalized to better work with the industry, although Macaferi had been providing technical advice and solutions for quite some time, close to 60 years prior to this. Today, Macaferi is involved in the civils industry on many fronts, with a team of qualified engineers, technicians working in a design office. We also have representatives in the various industry bodies, societies, and committees, all whilst being registered with ISO as well. So we're part of SAICI, EXA, and the like. So what sectors do we operate in? We provide technical knowledge, product solutions in the urban and transportation infrastructure sector, so things like roads and railways. In the environmental protection sector, things like landfills or leachate ponds. In the mining sector, with reference to rockfall, crusher tip walls, and coastal and river protection structures as well, such as river linings, dams, spillways, groins, and all of those hydraulic structures. Now, I thought today I would give you a peek behind the concrete curtain that is our MacRes MSE wall system, as many of our peers often ask how these structures work. And sort of very simply put, we provide some degree of lateral restraint to a block of soil or fill by introducing a tensile element that then interacts within the block. At Macaferi, we use Paraweb, so it's a polymer geostrap that's then connected and laced behind the concrete panels. And we've implemented the system quite successfully at very many projects in South Africa and abroad. Specific mentions could be Mount Edgecombe Interchange, Atterbury Interchange as well, and quite a few others in and around South Africa. We're only able to provide these solutions to the industry due to our stringent quality control and testing program, as all of our products and solutions are tested and verified by accredited third bodies. And it gives us a good feel for long-term performance and design parameters to be used by engineers in the industry. In terms of collaboration, Macaferi also has spent a lot of time and effort developing software for education and even commercial purposes. These softwares represent best practice in terms of design. All kinds of applications in the industry can be designed on these softwares. We have software for hydraulic works, for rockfall design, for roads, and quite a few more. What's better is that all these packages integrate verified material properties, so kind of an integration between software and materials, and are perfectly free to download and use if you go onto our website. So that's all I have to say for today. As Macaferi, we always aim to engineer a better solution, and we hope to grow with our industry. Thank you to SAICI for having us, and I wish you, Mr. Vishal Krishan, a successful 2021 as the SAICI president. Thank you very much.
Some really very interesting technical. Thank you very much, Kyle, and thank you, Macaferi South Africa, for supporting us on this event. Young professionals are a critical component of the civil engineering pipeline. As custodians of the profession, our young professionals have borne the brunt of the severe downturn in the construction industry pre-pandemic and are in an extremely vulnerable position as we look forward to sector recovery right now. Nalutando Zita is a site engineer, having recently graduated from the University of Witwatersrand with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. She has served as the chairperson of the WITS SciC student chapter in 2019 and 2020, and was selected as a WIMENCH Southern Africa Fellow in 2020. Join me in welcoming this passionate changemaker to the platform. Melitando, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for the wonderful introduction. That was great. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and privilege to speak in such a platform. I would really like to commend SciC for elevating the voice of young professionals like myself. I'm very young. Today's topic is one that I'm very passionate about. It was first introduced to me in 2018 when I first joined WITS student chapter as a subcommittee member. The topic I will focus on this evening is insights on effective ways of bridging the gap between young members and experienced professionals in their engineering journey. I will start by first explaining the building blocks to today's topic. I will then highlight some of the challenges we're facing today, possibilities, and solutions. What is bridging the gap? Bridging the gap simply implies to filling the space between two different things or people. In the context of today's topic, it talks to connecting students to young professionals with experienced professionals, and everyone in the game. Bridging the gap will soon ensure that the industry as a whole, that is, companies and tertiary institutions, including voluntary organizations like SciC and EXA, will never run short of individuals with experience the moment current managers retire. There are a number of things that serve as proof that there is a gap, and that's our challenge today. That is, less people are involved in projects that support bridging the gap, such as mentorship. Not enough engagement, and many young professionals are unprepared for the working environment. Together as a unity, working on a common goal, we can narrow the gap, and before we know it, the gap will be non-existent. But where do we start, Thando, you may ask? Well, let me propose a start by sharing with you my grade 8 year theme. To whom much has been given, much is required. To me, the quote simply says everyone is held responsible for what they have, be it talents, knowledge, time, and the like. The universe then expects us to pay it forward and benefit others. Those people that we have benefited, they also are expected to pay it forward and benefit others, and so on. Over a decade later, I still resonate so much with the quote. And I believe the quote is a perfect quote to serve as a vital tool into bridging the gap that I'm talking about. By bridging the gap between the old and the young, inexperienced and experienced, as well as students, academia, and professionals in the engineering space. In my involvement with WITS SciC and SciC Johannesburg, I have witnessed the positive impact of speed mentoring and video series to both students and professionals. The 5 minutes long conversations between students and professionals have informed many decisions and have encouraged retention rates and have increased many people staying in the engineering field. That's why I graduated. Other ways of narrowing the gap include industry talks, LinkedIn, job shadowing, vacation work, and many more. I urge companies to give students vacation work. It's part of bridging the gap. To effectively narrow the gap, we are all responsible in making sure that all levels of engineering are merged. These levels include, but not limited to, engineering institutions, companies, tertiary institutions, and high school level. Other potential considerations include having a formal, well-structured mentorship program and positive representation at the workplace and its tertiary institutions. Encouraging everyone to share their story and creating and practicing the culture that promotes bridging the gap. This can be through sporting events, debates, and many more. I will leave you with sharing my own personal story. In my final year, whenever I thought about the year 2021, that is last year, I would get really anxious about how life would be like, especially for me, a young female engineer in the construction industry. Things turned out differently. I got really excited and motivated when I learned that my supervisor is young and female. This made sense and became a positive affirmation that I'm at the right place at the right time. This is an example of positive representation in the industry. Imagine if everyone felt this way. Won't this make everyone feel welcome? Won't this increase productivity? And in turn, narrow the gap I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nolutando. And it's also great to see how much progress you've made in the short time that you've been in industry. So thank you very much for sharing. We're going to go into an advertorial from our sponsors, Macaferi. So take it away. Thank you for that. It was very energizing. And thank you again, Macaferi South Africa, for supporting this event. So it's competition time. This time it's fastest fingers first. So I'm going to share the competition question. You're going to have the opportunity to put your answer into the chat box, and our administrators behind the scenes will be checking your answers and selecting our winner. So here goes. And the question is, name 3 of the 7 pillars in SAIC's Growing Forward strategy. Question again, name 3 of the 7 pillars of SAIC's Growing Forward strategy. Good luck. So ladies and gentlemen, onto the highlight of tonight's event. Vishal Krishnadath serves as SAIC's 118th president. He is a professional civil engineering technologist with over 26 years of experience in construction, local government, academia, and consulting engineering. Vishal holds both a Master of Science in Engineering and an MBA from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He is the Technical Director of Nieleti Consulting and based in Durban. With a deep-seated passion for strategy, leadership, diversity, and inclusion, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome SAIC President Vishal Krishnadath.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica. Really appreciate the introduction. To my fellow SAIC members and all those who have joined us from far and wide, I would like to give you all a warm welcome. And thank you for joining us for this presidential address. Special thanks goes to Macaferi, especially during these trying times. The support is sincerely appreciated, and I'm sure that our partnership will grow from strength to strength. So for today, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what's going to happen in terms of my presentation. I'm going to try and stick to my time. I've been told that I need to be on time, but yeah. I will look at the overview of the presidential theme, look at gender inclusivity and diversity, touch on the concept of patriarchy, the glass ceiling, look at the exodus of the female engineers from the engineering or civil engineering industry, touch on a bit of the inequality of rewards, and look at some strategic aspects in terms of talent acquisition, talent retention, and then we will move on to the inclusivity and diversity strategy. So without further ado, let me move on. In keeping with the SAIC's growing forward strategy, where diversity and inclusivity is one of the areas of growth or pillars, I saw this as a fitting theme for my presidency. I felt that the issue of the advancement of gender, inclusivity, and diversity in the workplace was a topic that I could embrace or relate to, because I've been very passionate about this for many years. This was also an opportunity for me to get more involved in the advocacy and implementation of best practices during my term of office, and hopefully I could contribute more to that. And for this theme, I've coined a phrase, and hopefully it will get some mileage during my presidency. And it's basically gender inclusivity is not about being accepted; it's about being respected. So that is what I've got to say. And just to reiterate that it could be any sort of passion that you have. It could be diversity. It could be anything that you look at. It's all about us showing a mutual respect to one another, and not necessarily seeking acceptance from our peers or society. So when you're looking at gender and inclusivity, yeah, sure. The issue of the subordination of women has long been a burning issue and goes back centuries. And that stems from the term of the concept of patriarchy. The word patriarchy, in fact, literally means the role of the father or the patriarch. And originally, it was used to describe a specific type of male-dominated family. And unfortunately, this is now crept into the workplace. But nowadays, it is used more generally to refer to the male domination and to the power relationships by which men dominate women, and to characterize a system whereby women are kept subordinate in a number of ways. So, in contrast to the patriarchy, the concept, in contrast to this concept, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 5 deals with achieving gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. And the belief is that gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the fundamental aspects of inequality in the workplace is the effect of the glass ceiling. There are various factors that contribute to the effect of the glass ceiling on women, and that could be either male-dominated norms, inequality of rewards, career breaks, and work-life balance. So these are the aspects that we really need to look at. A lot of research has been done on these topics. And in 2019, I conducted research myself on the effects of the glass ceiling on women engineers in consulting firms in South Africa. And from there, a total of about 140 women engineering professionals responded to the survey. And from the research, the study showed that around 74% believe that vital decisions were still being made by men outside of formal meetings. Around 63% believe that the all-boys clubs in the organizations limited women's opportunities to advance to management positions. Around 66% were of the view that the company's structure and culture was centered around male engineers. And of the women who stayed in the organizations between 6 to 10 years, about 72% supported the fact that women had to outperform their male counterparts to be promoted to the same positions in the organizations. For many of us, these results are not surprising, as many women have experienced similar situations in their workplace. And mindsets need to be changed for those individuals who are not amenable to change and are not able to accept that gender inclusivity is of utmost importance to level the playing field and to create a more sustainable working environment. Companies who have embraced the I&D strategies have proven to be better performing than those that have not. And it certainly makes business sense, apart from the moral, ethical, and legal obligations in terms of gender inclusivity within the working environment. Another very concerning aspect in terms of gender inclusivity, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that many women engineering professionals are leaving the profession. And from recent statistics from the Engineering Council of South Africa, it shows that around 70% of the women who had graduated with engineering degrees left the sector after starting their careers because they felt isolated and really undervalued in their jobs. From research undertaken by PwC, the five main reasons women gave for leaving their employers were, well, number one, not enough opportunities for career progression. They felt that their skills and talents were not rewarded enough, and also that the work was not rewarding to them. And in fact, they were not getting any self-reward. They were not being offered good projects, challenging projects in which they could basically gain enough experience. And also, they found that their work and personal life were not in sync. And lastly, a lot of them, and basically this was happening at the moment, is that they're finding jobs where they're getting a higher salary. And ladies and gentlemen, for far too long, women had to accept the conditions that they have had in the workplace. And it's no surprise that they are fighting back with valid reasons. And the time has come for women to be recognized for their contributions to the organizations, and for the companies to adapt to the changing needs as a whole in order to be successful. Just moving on to that with regard to your inequality of rewards. This can be described as the differences in the pay gaps between male and female employees who have similar experiences and are on the same employment level. The equality of rewards can also stem from bonuses or increases that male employees receive as they're perceived to be going the extra mile. It can also be the lack of promotions that women receive as opposed to their male counterparts, as men place work and career as their priority, as opposed to women who feel that family responsibility and childcare is their top priority. And basically, I know this scenario is slowly changing as we move ahead. From the World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report of 2016, it was reported that the worldwide pay difference between male and females may only come to an end in the year 2186, which is 165 years away. This, ladies and gentlemen, is quite disturbing, as I do not believe that even many of our great-grandchildren may even be born to witness this event. From a similar report published in 2018, South Africa ranks around 19th out of 105 countries on gender equality, and a low of 117 in wage equality for similar work. This goes against the law of South Africa, where the requirements are equal pay for equal work. I must also mention that inside South Africa's business philosophy, transparency and rewards with regards to salaries is not very, very evident, and may also be against company rules or company policy to discuss any salary with colleagues, as this also could be grounds for dismissal. From our 2018 SAICI salary survey, which was based on the annual salaries of male and female young engineers, technologists, and technicians, it was found that the mean and median salaries were around 13.6% and 11.5% higher for male than for female young professionals, respectively. This was further reinforced by research that I undertook, where over 53% of the female respondents found that a large salary inequality exists in favor of men even though they carry the same credentials. Around 80% of the respondents felt that the issue of gender very negatively impacted their chances of promotion at their workplaces. And over 74% agreed that the fact that promotion practices tend to have much higher expectations of performance and effort from women as compared to their male counterparts. And this was an enormous obstacle to their advancement in their careers. Just under 86% said that engineering firms have performance and appraisal policies and incentive schemes that favor men, which stagnated their career growth. From that, some of the recommendations that was discussed was the implementation of a policy of transparency of pay grades and normalization of rewards. Is to develop policies and frameworks in order to address the inequality of rewards at all levels in the organization, and also the effect of women as they advance the higher echelons of their positions. We found that the pay gap was much larger at those levels. Also, to ensure that policies should be transparent and include a framework which identifies qualifications, experience, and professional registration as a benchmark for ensuring parity of rewards. When it comes to talent acquisitions, in order to create a sustainable talent pipeline and be a talent magnet for modern workforce, employers must actively focus on creating and delivering gender-inclusive recruitment. From research undertaken by PricewaterhouseCoopers PwC in 2017, it was found that of the companies that adopted inclusivity and diversity practices, 71% said that these had a positive impact on their recruitment efforts. 39% said that the practices had led to increased levels of female participants, or applicants, should I say. 32% led to increased levels of female graduate hires, 27% to increased levels of female experience hires, and 24% to increased levels of external female leadership. The top 5 practices identified by respondents who said that their diversity policies were having a positive impact on their recruitment are listed. And ranked from 1 to 5, the practice of establishing gender diversity recruitment targets was number 1. Delivering diversity or unconscious bias training to the interviewers was ranked at number 2. Number 3, establishing adequate equality and equity policies within the organization. Thereafter, number 4, actively focusing or having an inclusive talent brand, which was able to pull high potential talent to your organization. And lastly, requiring mandatory diverse slates for open positions. So any external positions we're basically inclined to an inclusive or diverse focus. And as the employer demand for female talent rises over time, it will be critically important not only to attract female talent, but it will also be able to develop, progress, and retain female talent once inside the organization. When presented with choices on what female candidates consider makes an employer more attractive, the 3 options that emerged as shining stars. The first was the opportunities for career progression. The second was the competitive wages and other financial benefits. And the third was the flexible work arrangements and a culture of work-life balance. From the graphic, you can see that it is evident that women have identified the flexible work arrangements as their top priority. If you look at the arrows, and opportunities for career progression as their second choice, leaving the financial aspects of their careers as the third choice. Thank you, ladies. Moving on to the inclusivity and diversity strategy, we can look at 4 initiatives for building a successful I&D strategy. And this could be based on the commitment and cascading of your strategy to the employees, from CEO to the workforce. You're looking at linking your I&D strategies to your growth strategies, the craft initiative portfolios, and also looking at tailoring for local impact. When you look at the first tier, you want to look at articulating and cascading the CEO's vision to galvanize the organization. For example, you can look at declaring targets for women in various management positions, have resources in place to drive the strategy in each business unit, and perhaps even provide incentives for achieving your I&D goals. Furthermore, you need to hold management accountable for the implementation of the strategies, as if these strategies are not your management not held accountable, then obviously there's not going to be buy-in from the lower tier staff. When looking at your second tier, you look at defining the I&D priorities based on what drives the business growth strategy. So CEOs must correlate the I&D strategy to the growth goals of the company, so that they work hand in hand. And it's important to highlight the various aspects of diversity and that will boost the talent acquisition and retention, and to ensure that there's a diverse mix of talent. Furthermore, if you look at the third tier, you need to craft a targeted portfolio of I&D initiatives to transform the organizations. So here, you must prioritize and invest in the portfolio of I&D initiatives and ensure it aligns with the overall growth strategy of your organization. You must build a truly inclusive organizational culture to ensure buy-in from all employees. Furthermore, in terms of your talent management policies, you need to basically look at revising them on a regular basis, and that will basically speak to your initiatives as you move forward. And this could be done by debiasing recruitment and advancement processes, promoting equal pay, and as well as deploying a comprehensive sponsorship programs to attract your high potential talent. And lastly, you need to tailor-make your I&D strategy to maximize the local impact. So your I&D strategy needs to adapt to different parts of your business units and the varying geographic and socio-cultural context in which they operate. You need to customize the overall I&D goals and priorities to the local conditions, and encourage a wider stakeholder engagement, as well as look at the cross-sector collaboration so that I&D strategies can be in sync with them. And what's important to note is that leadership and management accountability must be enforced in any strategy. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to say that my presentation is in no way exhaustive, and there's a long way to go in order for there to be parity in gender inclusivity and diversity. However, we must continue to encourage discourse and debate so that we can move forward in a positive way to advance I&D goals. Just in terms of the President Ramaphosa's speech, he did not cover much on inclusivity and diversity, but he did cover issues in terms of women in business. But gender inclusivity and diversity needs to be enforced very firmly. And this can be done via the Constitution, the Employment Equity Act, BEE, as well as looking at the King 4 codes, which encourages organizations to remunerate fairly, responsibly, and transparently, and then also ensure that there is gender parity. Furthermore, to attract the modern talent pool, we must organizations must equip themselves to offer opportunities for career progression, flexible work arrangements, and a culture of work-life balance and competitive pay. Also, in order to attract the best and brightest male and female talent, they must also make this an integral part of their talent brands and employer value propositions. Finally, companies must include gender inclusivity and diversity in their company strategies and ensure that there's a top-down approach with responsibility and accountability, as well as a company-wide buy-in. So ladies and gentlemen, that is my address, but I just want to leave you once again with my phrase of gender inclusivity and diversity, I must add, is not about being accepted, It's about being respected. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vishal. So like Vishal said, diversity is like being invited to the party, and inclusion is like being asked to dance. So Vishal's presidential address acts as a call to action and also echoes the words of Sheryl Sandberg, who says that we cannot change what we are not aware of. And once we are aware, we cannot help but to change. So thank you, Vishal, for recognizing the challenges affecting the engineering pipeline and the struggle of women to get to the C-suite and in the entrepreneurship process. So thanks once again. So just to recap, ladies and gentlemen, please engage with us in the chat box and in the Q&As, also via social media. I've seen quite a few questions come through. All the presentations and recordings will be made available after this event. So please do follow on our social media and also your emails that you'll receive directly from SciC. So Patrick Dobson said, in a climate of uncertainty and fear, without strong and visionary leadership, people panic. And we've seen people panicking over the last year. But the assurance of quality and steadfast leadership is key. And we've seen that with SciC through the Growing Forward strategy. This multifaceted strategy covers the various elements that help SciC achieve its objectives. Each area in the Growing Forward strategy presents an opportunity for you, valued SciC members, to get involved and make a difference. So if you're interested in getting involved in any of the Growing Forward strategy areas, please leave your details in the chat box or email mishka@scic.org.za. And now for our competition winner. So the winner of tonight's prize, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll please. The winner of tonight's prize is Pati Masemirembwe. Pati, please could you email mishka@scic.org.za to redeem your prize. Congratulations, and we hope to see an increase in the interest levels in getting involved in the SciC Growing Forward strategy. So ladies and gentlemen, we're making great time and we're getting straight into our Q&As. So I'd now like to invite our panelists to switch on their videos and engage with us as we take this webinar into a more interactive conversation. So the way we're going to do the Q&As is you would have remembered, you would have seen that we had done a survey of asking for questions. We had a fantastic response. So we do encourage you to continue engaging with us in that way. So we'll go through a few of the questions that had come through from there. And then we've also had a great response to Q&As in today's live session. So then we'll be moving on to questions there. So I'm going to direct a couple of questions to the various panelists. I'm going to start with Vishal Lakshman. And this is around SciC's activities and also SciC's level of engagement with members. So the first question is, what is SciC's involvement in national issues with regard to infrastructure investment and development? And what other industry initiatives are currently underway?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jessica. I had a look at the questions. I feel like somebody already knows all of the issues that we are working with, so they have asked the questions. Because for once, I feel a bit relieved because I can actually answer it quite easily. And it makes me feel that we're doing something right because we can respond to questions that are being asked. So in the interest of time, and I see we have a bit of time, I'd like to just take a little bit of extra time in answering this question specifically, because it's quite a big one. So SciC has, on behalf of the institution, I'm giving feedback because I work with a very diverse team. The team is made up of chairpersons of divisions, chairpersons of branches and branch committees. There's panels and committees that are part of the institution, together with national office and myself, that work as a collective. So there are initiatives that I'll just highlight a few of the big ones, but there are many others. And again, it's not, and I may not even know of them because some of them are happening at very specific interventions at geographic level, and some are national. So as it comes to answering that question, there are a few things that we are doing. One is dealing with the national discussion. And for that, I'm sitting in various ministerial working groups. And we spent a lot of time trying to make inroads into these ministerial working groups as it applies to public works and infrastructure, as it applies to water, as it applies to the project Vulindlela, if you've heard of that, sitting with National Treasury, all the same, because the objectives that are trying to be achieved in these initiatives relate to the same objective, which is to create unemployment, get this economy working, get the skills to the place that it is demanded in. So as it pertains to these various initiatives I've mentioned, the institution is part of the discussion forums that give technical inputs to the working papers that they would send to us. So that's one initiative. The second one is to work with agencies. In other words, we have embarked on a reconnecting type of initiative. In other words, reconnect and build relationships with provinces, metros, in addition to government or national government, which I've just mentioned. So as it, and I promise you, not all respond. Not everybody wants to actually talk to the institution around capacity building and around technical issues and strategy, but there are those that do want. And we have managed to make a few inroads into some of them, where we are providing technical input in terms of how they actually execute procurement, for example, how they commission the services of our professionals. And we've made inroads into certain of the SOCs, and I wouldn't want to mention the names just yet. But what I can assure you is there are many colleagues around this call and within the institution that are working towards influencing how professionals are, the services of professionals are adopted within the institutions, so that it can be more, people are just using procurement as a tick box exercise, and we wanted to make it more meaningful. So the inputs from the division and the national office is doing that. The third way is part of an alliance. As you know, we can't do it all by ourselves. So we need to be part of lobby groups. And there are many lobby groups that we are part of South Africa. So there is a body made up of about over 35 entities that we work together, again, lobbying for the same concepts that we would all like to see happen, which is get the projects out, create the pipeline that's robust, make sure it's funded, make sure that tenders are put out and awarded, and make sure that whoever is doing the work gets paid. So that's like one of the bigger issues that we work, which is real and it's short term, and we want these things to work immediately, because that's the quick win that we've acknowledged from a CASA point of view. We are currently also advocating. In other words, you would have heard the president speak of the concept of advocacy. In other words, it sort of reminds me of standing on top of a hill and shouting as loud as you can. Hopefully somebody will listen. So there's communications coming out from the institution, and we have now connected with the various media houses to do that. And that's on the back of the SAIC National Office PR and marketing team that have made the links into industry. So you will see a lot of content coming out with regard to engineering news. And we're getting a lot of coverage as a result of that, by going to media, by being on radio, by being on television and the things like that. And each and every time we speak, we say the same things. And it sounds boring, I'll be honest with you, but at least it's consistent. And it's consistent, and it needs to be told over and over again. Look after the professionals that are in the industry, connect the skills with what is demanded, because we see a disconnect. The president announced that, besides ladies, there are also professionals that are leaving the industry for whatever reason, because of despondency. There's retrenchments that are ongoing, and we need to try and curtail these things. Let alone the other question that I have to answer is those that are coming through the system and cannot find employment. So that's the situation of I suppose, the economics of the day that dictates what is happening. But I think, in my opinion, there are more people that are listening now, because I think the situation has become quite dire, and they need somebody to lean on. And I think that's where the institution will fulfill its mandate in being there and supporting the the public sector and even the private sector where it is required. So from my point of view, those are the 4 things. And the last one is thought leadership. For example, this discussion we had today, there's certain insights that we've provided, between all of the presentations on how your worldview should be framed. The negative dialogue doesn't help anybody. It doesn't create energy. It doesn't bring economic growth. It actually doesn't do anything. It's quite destructive, actually. So to shift away from that, realizing that irrespective of positive energy, and realize that we are working for the common good of people in this country. So the sense of patriotism should start right now when it's the worst. And if we can get this thing right now, I think we got a much, much brighter future when things do start to turn around. What we can't do is let things slip a lot more. So I hope that has answered some of the questions. I did speak about 4 different constructs to that question. I hope it helped to understand what the institution is doing. And that is more on the external side. There's also internal institutional gearing to respond more meaningfully to our members so that they can contribute a lot more to the developmental discussion. And that will be coming out in due course. It might even be another question along the way. But I'll leave it there for now, Chairperson.
Thank you, Vishal. Before we close up on that question, so how, as members, could we get more information on what the deliberations at CASA, what's going on, what are some of the big key issues? How will you engage with members on that?
Some of the discussions are not for public consumption, I'll be honest with you, because the initiatives led by the ministerial working groups do have a non-disclosure stuck onto it. So it's not easy to communicate what we are doing for government, because these are policy type discussions that are not that will come out via the entity themselves. We're not really allowed to speak of what we are doing with them. So we do this as a contributor to the initiative, and we allow government to communicate on that. So from that point of view, I can speak of what we are doing, but or breaking a monopoly such as that one might regard Transnet to hold. The constructs of unpacking a monopoly like that is very sensitive, and we wouldn't want to start communicating about it just yet. We do know what Eskom is doing, and they have unbundled into 3 different components, but we're working with National Treasury on the lead entity to talk about it other than ourselves speak about it. But there are initiatives that we are involved that we can talk about. For example, looking at skills and looking at capacities of provinces and metros. Those are easy ones to talk about because we are working with them, and there isn't any non-disclosures in place at this time. So when it comes to CASA, I think PR and marketing will communicate the initiatives. But as you mentioned, if you want to know more about the institution, it's best to be involved. It's best to become part of these working groups, like the Growing Forward strategy. They are always wishing more people to be part of these initiatives. And all of those colors in the circle picture that you put in, work happening behind the scenes. And if you become part of or actively part of the institution, you start to network, you start to get to know exactly what we are doing. And then you start to become much more aware, which goes into the other domain of what you'd like to change. And there, many of the volunteers have almost free rein to do what they would like to do in terms of championing these initiatives. So I really urge more people to call out to Ntabeleng or the champion heads, the leads that are there for now, and make contact and volunteer a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, and it'll take you a long way in terms of building your network in the industry. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Vishal. And before we move on to the next question, I just want the complexity of the structure at SAIC. So there's opportunities to get involved at your branch levels. There's opportunities to get involved in the various divisions from a technical depth of experience perspective, the journals, publications, PR, and then the Growing Forward strategy, which basically pulls all of these things together. So as a member-driven organization, there are those opportunities. But I thank you, Vishal, for sharing on CASA, and we will look forward to the PR and comms that come with that. I think we've also touched on some of the questions, you've touched on some of the questions around how the SAIC National Office drives branches and the members receive value from that perspective. I think one of the big questions that's come through, and this touches on a number of questions that have come through, the breakdown in the engineering pipeline as a result of retrenchments, unemployment, and a lack of opportunities thereof. And a part of it is with regards to the knock-on salary levels that many individuals have experienced. So this is almost like, so Hanro Marx asks, how long, in our opinion, do we think it will take for salary ranges to normalize post-COVID? So I'm going to ask Vishal Krishandaki if you want to offer an assessment, and then we'll go into the second part of the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Jesh. Yeah, organizations, as Vishal Lakshman did mention, that a lot of the business have closed down. There's been a lot of downsizing with organizations. There've been a lot of furlough that has been taking place in various organizations. And sometimes you think to yourself, you're lucky to have a job, and because of what has happened. So in terms of the normalization of salaries, if you're looking at the strategies that has come through from various organizations, a lot of them have been doing a lot of cost-cutting measures. And to look at to do a scenario in terms of forward planning, sometimes you can only see about 5 to 6 months into the horizon at the moment, because the fact of the matter is that within our industry, a lot of the projects have dried up. Some of the major key projects in terms of the SIP projects are coming online, but that's just a few that you can mention of. The bread and butter projects are still sitting at maybe the municipal levels, or looking at the regional level. So from that perspective, it has been it has had a severe impact on organizations. Organizations are just trying to keep their lights on. They have had to downsize or restructure their salary packages from that perspective. So, in terms of normalization, it is very difficult to say. And, it's like I say, you're looking into a crystal ball. But all I can say is that we need to be very optimistic. This is the worst recession we've seen in a long time in terms of our industry. But just it's a guarantee that it will pick up, but it's going to probably take maybe about a year or so, year and a half, to really start normalizing to a certain extent, and hopefully starts increasing to a level where we can start reaping the rewards. So for within the next maybe 2 years or so, in my opinion, I would say, we will look at where we would actually seeing some rewards in terms of normalization of our salaries and stuff like that. Thank you, Jesh.
Thank you, Vishal. And I think there's been many comments that have come through regarding your presidential message and how apt your presidential message has been. And I think you hit a nerve with many of our attendees in also seeing the scale of the challenges that exist in the engineering pipeline. So this is a two-part question. And the first part is with regard to the gender aspect. And I think Noluthando would also be able to offer some insights here as a recent graduate. And that is, so if we look, you talked about the EXA statistics around professional registration. And the statistics still point to the fact that there's only about 5% of the professionally registered engineers in this country being female. And that is also something that from a capacity development and a professional registration perspective, that SAIC is, and what would be some of the initiatives that you would drive, moving that number from 5% to something a bit more representative of the demographics of the country?
That is such an important question. If you look at professional registration, your professional registration is basically based on the experience that you have. And what I find, what we found is that, and it was basically one of the reasons a lot of the females were leaving the industry, was because they felt that they weren't getting any job satisfaction. So from my opinion is that we need to start changing mindsets, and not the mindsets of the young engineers or young female engineers. We need to start changing the mindsets of the much more senior individuals who are basically allocating projects to these engineers. The fact of the matter is that some like I said, we need to start changing their mindsets, because it's an issue of trust. The fact of the matter is that a lot of them, all the engineers and don't really want to trust the young engineers on challenging projects. So what happens? The young female engineer sits there, not doing the challenging projects, and when it comes to the evaluation, they find that he's not consistent with the EXA requirements. They haven't ticked all the boxes. So that is where we come from. And in my opinion, is that, and I've always said, you look at how you mentor a student. Adequate mentorship